Today's episode is sponsored by Knock Knock, the makers of the unbearably adorable and exceptionally useful Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. Send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock. I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
Because you have to work at a relationship, right? Like, we have 2 kids, we pee and poop with the door open.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is about sex after baby. Listeners have been asking me lately to inquire with my guests about what happens to sexual intimacy after childbirth. And this is an issue that's not often talked about in our culture, so it's a privilege to be able to ask my guests directly about their experience. And our couple today, Jamie and Jessica, well, they share with us how they met very young, fell in love, got married early, and jumped into parenthood quite quickly. And they have a lot to say about how to maintain the passion. Now, as an aside, our conversation about sex and intimacy during marriage continues after we cut it for this episode, and it's quite good. We're going to be rejiggering our Patreon page to make it more of a community in the next several weeks. And if you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, let me know and I'll post it up on Patreon for that community. So with that, let's go to our interview with Jamie and Jessica.
So we met, we both worked for a nonprofit organization called Clean Water Action. And that is, so just to give you a little context about that organization, it's a nonprofit and they work to lobby around environmental and public health legislation. And their biggest department is the Canvas, people that actually knock on doors to fundraise and do community organizing. So Jamie and I both worked in the Canvas, and he was in training to be a staff director for a Canvas office, and I was a field manager. And one thing about us is that we're 4 years apart, which, I mean, at our age now, like, you don't really notice it, but I was 19 and he was 23. So I was just coming out of my freshman year of college and he had just graduated college.
You were just a baby.
I was a baby.
There are still jokes in my family that have lived on almost a decade now.
I was his teenage girlfriend.
Wait. So how long have you been, I probably should interrupt, but how long have you been married?
Yeah. We've been married 5 years. Our 5-year wedding anniversary was just this past Saturday.
Yep. And
okay.
We met each other 9 years ago. Just over 9 years ago.
Wow. You're still in your 20s, Jessica.
I'm 28.
That's great.
Okay. I hope you're not laughing because it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, it's a different kind of marriage. These marriages that start young and manage to survive, they're a phenomenon anymore.
And there's so much that we haven't even told you, that there's so much about our relationship that all the odds were against us.
All right, keep going. I'm going to stop interrupting. Tell the story.
So we met at this job. Actually, the first time we met, like, all the different offices in Pennsylvania went on a retreat. So there was this, like, farm in the middle of Pennsylvania. We all went on this retreat. Like, people that work for nonprofits are sometimes hippy dippies and they go on these retreats in the middle of nowhere.
You sound so dismissive, but really it was like a chance to have a campfire.
Yeah, it was super fun.
And it was really enjoyable.
It was really enjoyable.
We got to meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
when you think of the farm, you also can think of the CIA, which is pretty hardcore. And let's be serious too about canvassing. That is not, that's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Canvassing is some serious tough business.
We were both well trained on accepting rejection.
You're right.
Yeah. And I think that's, like, there's a lot of canvassing love stories, like people that meet canvassing, because it takes such a rare personality, somebody that's okay knocking on doors and actually enjoys the process of, like, interrupting people at dinner and saying, like, take a look at my clipboard. I need you to write a check. Like, the type of, if you...
I'm going to take your time, your money, and all of your resources, and you had no idea I was going to show up, and I love it.
And I love every second of it. So if you have that in common, like, chances are, you've got a lot of other stuff in common. So we had that going for us. And so we actually met at that retreat, and I was on what they call a cross train. So I was working in the Pittsburgh office for 5 weeks while Jamie was on a cross train in the Philadelphia Philadelphia office, my home office, for a month.
Okay.
So I came back from Pittsburgh and he was still in Philadelphia for 2 more weeks. And like my first couple of days back at work in Philadelphia, Jamie was there training to be a director, and all my friends, we were going out. We're in the, in the city of Philadelphia, and I'm like, let's invite Jamie out.
Which was nice, being the guy from outside, not really knowing anybody. So I always appreciate when someone reaches out and says, hey, you want to come hang out with us?
Yeah. And so, we invite him out. And, remember, I'm 19 at the time, and we're going out drinking. So we go to this, like...
places that let her drink.
Can we curse on your show or no?
You can curse. And I also want to know about how did you manage the fake ID?
There was no fake ID. We just went to bars that didn't card us. Like my best friend.
You got to know these places in every city when you were in college.
Yeah. So my best friend, Patria, was also 4 or 5 years older than me. So she knew all the places to take us. And so we took Jamie, and we would go to this diner, and they had like this little cocktail bar section. And then, we ordered like grilled cheese and tomato sandwiches and rum and cokes, and just got drunk after work.
Oh, to go back a decade and remember what life was like.
Oh, the carefree days.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And like the work shift also, this was in the summer. So this is like July or August. So it's hot. Our work shift was 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we're just working these bizarre hours,
Wow.
Sleeping in late, getting up and working into the night. And then, we'd go out and drink and eat bar food. And I thought this guy, Jamie, was pretty cute. And after a couple rum and cokes, I decided I knew what I wanted, and I just went and got it.
Wait. You knew what you wanted in life or for the evening, or what are we talking about?
Definitely not that big a picture.
Specifically that night.
That night, okay.
And I think we've been together ever since.
Yeah, no, seriously. And it's like one of those rare stories of, just in case my parents are listening, we started dating that night, and
we committed to each other fully and completely.
Right. We were very responsible.
Yeah, and it was like, this is just, I think, and I don't know what it's like to meet and date someone when you're in your 20s or 30s, because I met him when I was 19, and I've been with him ever since. And, you just move fast and you don't really think. And, of course, the next day we go to work. I remember that next day, like, had to buy clothes at H&M because I didn't go home.
That's genius. That's also, I mean, I hope you put that somehow in the wedding vows. Or...
No, never even thought about it. I never went home after meeting you.
And so, I got his phone number, and then, we went on a few dates, and like 2 weeks later, he was off to the next office. Then he went to Baltimore. Yeah. But before that ended, we're like, so, you're moving. He went to Baltimore for a month, and then he was moving to Providence, Rhode Island. And this is where, he would stay. I'm like, so you're basically going to not be in Philadelphia. I'm here for the next 3 years for school. You are not. Like, what are we going to do? And we were both like, I like you,
So let's play it a little bit by ear.
Let's just stay together and like see what happens. And then we did.
Let me interrupt. I want to ask you, Jamie, a question. Was there something about the short-term nature of it that gave you, I don't know, I guess like unconscious permission to go faster? I mean, because she was leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I knew when we first met there, it was like, well, I've only got 2 weeks here, and then I'm back on the road, 6 weeks in the next city, and then moving to a new city that I'd never been to, and didn't know anybody anywhere. And I have a hard time even remembering what was I thinking, except that I did like her. I really liked spending time with her. I enjoyed working with you, and we were interested in lots of the same things. We were, except for sports, except for that area, but we were interested in much of the same. Like, we were working for a cause. We wore our hearts on our sleeves every day, and when somebody like that comes along, you go, well, let's ride this as long as we can. And I don't know about whether the impermanence or the situation that made it seem like there was going to be impermanence for this led to anything, but it also seemed like a challenge. Like, is this challenge worth it? and we were going to find out, and we would have to use all of our creativity to stay together in many ways. And at every decision point where it was, okay, so there's a new challenge, new obstacle about us living so far apart, her being still in college, me trying to start a new career, that every time that decision point came, said, well, let's try it and let's see if it works. So right now, it makes sense to see if we can overcome that obstacle as well.
Well, okay. So in that case, let's turn to those obstacles. You're living apart, so that's one obstacle.
That's one.
But that can also make things more passionate, because then when you do see each other, it feels so exciting and special.
And we, in the beginning, so it's like, well, I'll take the first 6 weeks afterwards, which is when I was in Baltimore and you were still in Philadelphia. That was kind of I almost think that was like the hardest part, because I was then moving somewhere else where I was completely transient as well, half living out of an old busted up minivan and half living out of a very small room that somebody had donated to me for a couple weeks. And there was really almost no opportunity to see each other. But at the same time, we were both I was in a pretty intense work environment at the moment, where there were long days, long nights, and very little any sort of downtime. And it was still really, I don't know, I'll say nice, but that's such a bland word for what it was. But it was really nice to have somebody that understood what I was going through, even if they weren't around. That she knew what the organization was. She's seen people move through what I've been doing, and she knew every piece of the job I was training for. And so I had somebody who wasn't with me all day, who could still reflect on what my experiences were. And it's like having somebody in my corner that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah, because a part of the job at Clean Water is they really, like, I remember there was a policy called positive and progressive, P&P. Like, that was a big thing, because it was like, and so there, you were not supposed to, they really encouraged positive and progressive workplace, no sexual harassment and all that stuff. And so it was discouraged to, be friends with people that you were managing and supervising. So the fact that we were no longer in the same office helped, because, I did understand, because most people, you tell them that you go door to door for your job, and they don't even understand what that lifestyle, or why would you even want to do that. So being in a relationship with somebody that gets it and that also likes it, just that common ground really helps. It's a good foundation.
It's funny to me that they discourage it, because I'm sure that by discouraging it, they actually encourage it. Because there's nothing quite as tantalizing as a taboo relationship.
And also the fact that the relationships were inevitable. It's almost like we have an official policy of you probably shouldn't be shacking up with the people that you work with the unofficial knowledge of we're never going to stop it, because these are all crazy kids and they're going to do crazy things. But we have to give ourselves some deniability and try to discourage it that it's a supervisor and somebody that they are, whose job depends on their job depends on it. So it was having spent 3 years in that environment at all different levels of the job. I look back at it and go, that is some crazy shit.
Now, Jamie, were you already done with college at this point?
I was. I had graduated. I had been out of school for when we had met, I had been out of school for about 4 or 5 months. I guess that was really about it.
Yeah, it was the summer after you graduated.
Oh, no, actually it was a year.
What did you do for that? Oh, because you were working at Allentown that year. I had started working
at Clean Water Action, and this was about a year after I had started working there that I met Jess. So I had been out of school for a year.
That's right.
And Jess, you had 3 more at that point.
I had 3 more. Yep, I just finished my freshman year, and I had 3 more years in school at Temple University.
Well, that makes me want to fast forward to what happened when you graduated.
Ooh.
Well, I think I know you want to fast forward there, but I think there's
something good in the middle. Okay.
I think there's a lesson in creativity, and to a point that you brought up before is that, yes, does it increase like the passion and excitement in a relationship? Yeah, and because we only got to see each other about twice a month for weekends at a time, and that we kind of set a schedule of when we would see each other, and we committed to it. Our relationship was something that needed a calendar, and it needed its own bank account so that we could travel. And so we gave gave it its own bank account, and we gave it a calendar and said, we're going to make sure our relationship works by us traveling and seeing each other these times. We pooled our resources so that we could fly back and forth, and we thanked Southwest dearly for having cheap flights from Providence to Philadelphia, where we could both take public transit to the plane, get off the plane, and transit to the other person. And that was kind of critical that in the end, it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah. And
overall.
just speaking of, the passionate nature of it, I remember the house that I lived in off campus that next year, that sophomore year of mine, my roommate and I, we were really good friends freshman year, and then we just totally grew apart, and it was like just a terrible living situation. She would throw these huge parties on Friday and Saturday nights that just trashed the house, and it was so loud, and it was awful. And I remember like this one Friday night specifically, I was just so sick of it, and it was dark at this point, so I don't know if it was 7 or 8 o'clock, but I took the subway to Center City, Philadelphia. I got on a Chinatown bus to New York City, and then in New York City, I transferred. I guess that would have taken me to Penn Station, which I got on a train, like the regional train that took me as far into Connecticut as I could. And then Jamie drove probably 2.5 hours south to Connecticut to pick me up. And then we drove back to his place in Providence. And then I probably got a train or flew home from there. But that was like a last minute, like I have to get out of here. And it was like this just...
But we didn't get last minute opportunities to see each other. We didn't do that often because it was hard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
Logistics
mean,
were
that
crazy.
you guys are the poster children for travel and making a long distance relationship work. Now I'm wondering if we can get Southwest Airlines to sponsor the show.
You should, with their whole like logo of with their love and everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
they are
heart.
really. And I know this podcaster I listened to, she's long distance with her boyfriend, like San Jose to LA, and she's said the same thing. Like they're flying Southwest all the all back and forth to each other.
Southwest
that's
Airlines.
That's your
free
sponsor,
tickets.
Eric. Right
Making
there.
long distance relationships work. Okay, I'm on it. I'm on it. You heard it here
Pitch him
first.
on the tagline.
Yes.
Okay, so wait, but back to the real story at hand. So, all right, so you're doing so you've got this you're basically saying that it was the commitment and the calendaring and like putting structure in place that allowed that to stay alive.
Mm-hmm. And we were just totally in love. I mean, head over heels. The blinders were up. I wasn't. I mean, for a lot of people, I think that there's like this ease into the relationship, and I just immediately fell in love with him, and like and I didn't have eyes for any other guy like at all. It was just like people ask like, "Wow, long distance." I'm like, it was easy for me because he was the only person I wanted to be with.
Well, okay, you just gave me a perfect segue. You said the blinders were up. Mm-hmm. Which insinuates that at some point the blinders come down.
Well,
or off or whatever.
They don't come off, but they do come down because you have to work at a relationship, right? Like we have 2 kids, we pee and poop with the door open. Like it's like, he's seen me birth 2 children. Like there is no, like sometimes Jamie will tell me like, about a huge shit he had. And I said, can we have some privacy? Can we have some secrets in our relationship? I mean, eventually.
Really.
And so to be quite honest, like, yeah, I mean, sometimes the blinders come down because when you see like other attractive men or women, you will only see the things that like seem attractive about them, but you realize that, you have gone through so much with the person you're with that it takes work to stay in that like passionate mode. Like you really have to work hard at it after 9 years and 2 kids and, you have to run a household together. It takes a lot of work to keep that alive.
I think there's also...
You guys are so young for 2 kids. I'm just going to bookmark that. I know you've got something you want to say, Jamie, but I just got to bookmark 2 kids.
Yeah.
It's so early in the marriage too.
Well,
I mean, that is...
I'm hoping that our kids are gone and away by the time that I'm 50 so that that's when we get our fun life, when we have been successful in our careers and have some money to spend and we're not poor as dirt trying to have fun. Our kids will be gone and we can be irresponsible 50-year-olds.
Yeah, that's a good model to follow. The one I completely missed, but I admire greatly.
Yeah. And we're having no more kids. We've already surgically prevented that.
Good move.
It's done.
So we're sometimes spontaneous on our decisions. Like when
When I got pregnant with our first child, it was like, I want to have a baby. And Jamie's like, okay, maybe in a few months. I'm like, but I want one now. And then we got pregnant.
Like immediately.
Well, okay. All right. So I had a caller, excuse me, I had a listener call in and ask the other day if I could inquire with married parents what happened to their sex lives after the kids came. And she was saying that in her experience, women tend not to be interested in sex so much after the kids come, at least for a couple of years. And it's very frustrating apparently for men in the situation, and that it's a sort of a dirty secret that a lot of that she thinks that this happens in the vast majority of relationships, and that nobody wants to talk about it.
I would love to comment on this, and I'm more than happy because
I'm sure that you do.
Well,
it's not like we didn't talk about it.
because this is a huge topic, and I'm glad that somebody called in, and I'm happy to address our experience. So, I mean, yes, mothers, women definitely, like, they went through pregnancy, childbirth. Not only is there a time to like heal their bodies, like when, as a woman, when you have a child, like you never have the body that you had before you had kids. You never have that back. And like you will always have a stomach that is just loose. You will. And if you don't, or you have to work out every single day and not eat any bread. It's terrible. So there is a process, a mental and emotional process to love your body again and feel sexy to yourself, because before you can like want to feel sexy with your partner, you have to learn to love this new body that you have now. So that's one component of it. And the other thing is, especially if you are a mom that breastfeeds, you literally have somebody sucking on you multiple hours a day, and it's exhausting. And then when they stop nursing, they're hanging on you, and like you just have people touching you all the time and like needing you. So we're talking kind of about like the first year or two. And so I'm done our daughter is 13 months old and Nathan's 3.5. I'm done nursing them. Nathan's going to be a little bit more independent. But I can tell you that the biggest thing for me that I realized was that birth control was, I think, a huge factor in what affects your sex drive, because as soon as, after 6 weeks after you give birth, the doctor says you can have sex again. And you're like, but I don't want to. Like 6 weeks. But anyway, that's a different kind of story there. But because that's
the same story.
Well, that is the same story. But that's just kind of like addressing the physical aspect of it. But then you start, most women will do the birth control, or some women will put in the IUD, but for the most part, you are back on hormones that are keeping you from getting pregnant. And birth control affects all women differently. Like one pill will affect everyone a little bit differently. And I never thought the birth control pill affected me because, like, my periods were easy. They came on time. Like, I didn't have any depression or emotional issues or physical issues. Like, it was just all fine and dandy. But then Jamie, so when we decided we're not going to have any more kids, I was like, well, I'm not taking a birth control pill for the next 25 years. You fucking kidding me? Like, no way. That sounds terrible. There's like a mental thing when every single day you have to remember to take a pill at the exact same time. That's a pain in the ass, men.
Right. And not to mention the impact that the hormones are having on your body.
Exactly. Like, it's a huge pain. And I'm like,
it definitely lost the sense of what it was like beforehand too. It's like you don't have a comparison because you've been taking these pills so long that it seems like the hormonal emotional normal. Yeah.
Right.
And then, so there's the taking the pill every day. I'm like, if we're not going to have any more kids, I'm not going to take that. Like, it's just be too long. And then I also said, I just had 2 pregnancies and 2 childbirths. I'm not going to get cut open to have my tubes tied. Like, that's not going to happen either. So there was about one other option. And I said, You're getting a vasectomy.
And believe me, I tried to make the argument around like health insurance doesn't actually cover this for men. It's a bad financial decision. But in the end, needed to have some empathy to realize I didn't have to do a lot of work on all the other things. We have 2 wonderful children. I love them very much. And maybe it's time for me to step up to the plate and do my job.
Yeah. So,
okay. So I'm trying to... I love that you stepped up to that plate.
But I have a conclusion to bring back, so don't go too
that's
far.
what I was trying to see. What's the conclusion?
Yeah, the conclusion is, so after Jamie got his vasectomy and like healed and everything, you have to wait until, like, the doctor was so funny. He's like this old Jewish guy, and he was like, I'm going to be terrible at the accent.
You are, because he wasn't Jewish, but go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, he just is a character, right? And so, we go to pick Jamie up at the hospital. It's just like a day thing. It's not overnight. So we go pick him up, and the doctor's like, okay, you need to stay on your birth control until I say he's sterile. Like, they're not sterile right away. So, then there's a little bit of time. What was it, like a month or two?
Yeah, 46 weeks, something.
Yeah. So, and then he has to go back in, and then the doctor tests, and you have to wait for the doctor to
Make
say.
sure there's no guy swimming.
Yeah. So you got to empty out the tubes. Anyway, so once we got the word that he was sterile, it was like, then I stopped taking the pills. And then as like my body like cleared out everything, and it's part of it's like a mental thing. Like, I'm not taking a pill anymore. Like, I'm free from this thing that I was taking every single day. And then the other part of it is I'm just no longer putting these hormones in. And I finally, for the first time in like 4 years, since before I was pregnant with Nathan, I just felt like myself again. I wasn't breastfeeding anyone. I wasn't taking any pills. I wasn't pregnant. Like, I was myself. And I all of a sudden had my sex drive back. Like, and it was great. And it wasn't just like, all right, we'll have sex tonight. It's fine. I'll get through it.
Which is always the best response you can get from your partner.
Yeah. Right.
That really
like,
gets things going.
I was initiating it again, which just felt like, and I said, wasn't the vasectomy worth it?
And I mean, it does sound like the vasectomy was an important part of it, but it was more than that, right? I mean, it was that you didn't have this baby dependent upon you, and that you weren't growing something inside of you.
Yeah, and I think that I also felt really appreciative of the fact that Jamie did something, to his body.
Look, I did something. Yay.
Right, but like seriously, physically, childbirth and pregnancy are no small tasks. You go through a lot, and over here, the dad's like, but I gained weight when you were pregnant. It's like, okay, shut up.
It's true.
Yeah,
I did
it's
eat that
definitely
extra
different.
brownie with you.
So there was this sense that, okay, we're kind of, you gave a little, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Okay, I hear that. Now, but that sounds like it was 4 years?
Well, yeah, our son Nathan's 3.5. So I got pregnant with him in June 2012.
And then what did so during that period where you just really weren't feeling it, Jamie, you probably still were during that phase?
Yes, of course.
I mean, I'm not saying we didn't
right.
have sex for
Right.
4 years.
Well, that's what I was going to say again is like,
I mean, we did.
We had to.
if you're not feeling it, Jessica, how do you approach it?
Okay, so I listened to this podcast called One Extraordinary Marriage, and one of their episodes is about the intimacy lifestyle, and they so clearly described this whole story of mothers and women and wives, like not like basically having a low, what do they call it? Like a low drive partner and a high drive, like the person that wants it more. And sometimes the guy wants it less and the woman wants it more, and how to handle that. And so these two, this husband and wife that have this podcast, they teach this thing called the intimacy lifestyle, which is where 3 days a week, one person initiates, and then another 3 days a week, the other person initiates, and then you have 1 day off. And they also teach, no rejection in the bedroom. And so you have to initiate in one of those 3 days. So if my days are, Sunday through Wednesday, and I haven't initiated sex by Wednesday, like I know Wednesday night I have to. And so we did that for a little while, like before I was pregnant with Lucy, and like after Nathan was kind of past his, baby phase, we actually basically followed that model. And that really helped.
Today's episode is sponsored by Knock Knock, the makers of the beautifully designed and exceptionally useful Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. Something we hear on the show over and over is how important it is to tell your partner what they mean to you. And you can't do it just once. This is something you've got to work on continually over time, which for some of us, like myself, can be a bit of a challenge. And that's where Knock Knock comes in. Their Fill in the Love collection makes it easy to tell your partner what they mean to you. You just fill in the blanks, and suddenly you've got a super cool and a really well-designed expression of your love. I have to admit that when I first heard of Knock Knock, I was a little skeptical. I was thinking that a fill-in-the-blank gift, maybe it wouldn't feel so genuine. But I have to say, it turns out not to be a problem. Basically, they give you just enough to get started, and then they leave all the critical parts open for you to get as honest and, well, as gushy as you want to get. And they're so well designed that you feel good giving these to your partner. So check out their website at knockknockstuff.com. I think you're really going to like their stuff. I do. So send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock. So following that model, you're going to have sex at least twice a week because you only have to initiate once in your 3-day period. Mm-hmm. Okay. And can you initiate more?
You can. I don't.
And is there like a rule about not saying no? It sounded like you were almost saying that.
Yes, I think that I think that when we agreed to this, we said we're not going to say no.
I mean, there are other pieces to it of like going through the day and signaling and providing signals. So it's not like you just drop this on somebody at 11 o'clock at night. But like, that doesn't matter how tired you are, right, or that you're waking up in 4 hours for whatever. Mm-hmm. It's that you want to find a way to communicate both your intentions and your feelings and your emotional comfort as well as your physical desire in various ways, so that it's not like a pop-up, now you can't say no, like a trap, if you will. But the idea being that without certain, unless there was like a particular reason why no, it can't happen today. That if it's somebody else's turn to initiate, when they do initiate, you.
And I think it was like Saturday through Tuesday and then Wednesday through Friday, because you wanted each person or Thursday, you wanted each person to have one weekend night, basically. So one person gets a Saturday and then another person gets a Friday. And then I think probably like Tuesday or Wednesday is the day off.
And you guys wanted to, you were doing this because you felt that it was important to maintain a healthy sex life in order to keep the relationship alive, right? I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm assuming that's what it is.
Exactly. An important sex life is so important to a relationship and to a marriage, because as humans, we desire sex. And if you're not getting it from your partner, those blinders get lower and lower, and you start, because the feelings are going to arise at some point. And if you are not engaging with your partner, you're going to start realizing those feelings are coming up with other people. And that's really dangerous. So you have to keep it focused and work at it with your spouse.
And what I find in my sex life is that sex is important and sex is critical. But part of it is really about intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about like cuddling on the couch and holding hands and all that.
Right. Yeah. And whatever energetic connection that causes, because ejaculation or orgasm, while critically important, are only one part of the pie.
And I don't feel that we ever actually lost the intimacy. Like, perhaps the sex drive wasn't there, but we never lost the desire to sit next to each other or go out to dinner and hold hands or give each other a kiss on our way to work or something. Like, that never left. While the sex drive ebbed and flowed, as the case may be, I actually don't think that we've ever really struggled with maintaining a certain level of intimacy and like a physical connection and closeness to it. And I almost feel like a lot of that stems from the way that our relationship started. Not to bring it back to the beginning, but that we went long periods of time without it. And so the opportunities to express intimacy, whether sexual or not, when the opportunity was there, we took advantage of it. And so whenever we were in close proximity, it became the norm for us to maintain a level of intimacy.
Well, I feel like some people are going to hear that and go, "Oh, wow, I'm so glad you guys never had any trouble." But
that's not true.
From my perspective, like, there were certainly periods of time after we had our first child where I felt like the only intimacy we really had was either sex, which was like kind of, no foreplay, just kind of do it because, and then like pecs, just kisses that are pecs, no making out. For a while, it was just pretty like you kind of did the minimum. And so, we
also had a little kid running around where all of our life was the minimum.
Exactly. And that's kind of the inspiration of this question is like, once you have kids, it's different.
It's like you have to work back to it, that each small child is such a massive disruption to your daily life. It takes a little while to find an equilibrium to what's your schedule? How do you be with each other? When do you find date nights? Do you even do date nights? Do you care? Like, what is it you have to figure out what is needed for the relationship, as well as what's your desire in it. And my sense is like the first year after a new child comes in, throw that all out the window. You're out of equilibrium, but keep working and keep trying to find it.
Okay. So that leads me to the question about scheduling, because this is something people are always talking about, is that you've got to schedule your sexual and your intimate times with your partner once kids come, but that it feels rote, that it feels dry. It doesn't feel authentic. And I think that creates resentment or a feeling of, a feeling of inauthenticity. So how do you manage that?
Well, I think that the style of just choosing 3 days and you have an opportunity to initiate in those 3 days, I think that's different than scheduling, because when you schedule and say like every, Wednesday we're going to do it, every Saturday you're going to do it, maybe you don't feel like doing it that Wednesday. And then you're like, crap, I have to. And that's, I think, where, resentment comes in. But when you have a full 3 days, like think through it. Like, when are you going to do it? And sometimes if Wednesday's the start of your 3 days, you might want to say, I'm going to get it over with on Wednesday. And
great way to think about it. Right.
But then the more you do it, like it becomes more natural, because for people that have a low sex drive, I think that the more you do it and like just make yourself do it, you rarely will regret it afterwards. Right. But the more you do it, then the sex drive like goes up a little bit. So you have to kind of do it to want it.
That is the thing about sex. I've had partners in my past who had low sex drives, and what they would always report to me is that they didn't dislike sex. They, in fact, liked sex an awful lot. It's just that they didn't have the drive to initiate.
Right.
Or if I was initiating, sometimes they would be ambivalent about it. But once we got going, they always enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that that's the case across the board, but it seems plausible given my limited experience.
Yeah, and I think if you're listening to this podcast and your partner still doesn't enjoy it, you might have some other issues.
Wow. Hey, you're a psychologist, right?
Jamie just says, wow.
Jess has played doctor as well as psychologist on this podcast already.
But I think for people that we're talking to, people that have had kids and you're just trying to figure out how to get back to it, I think more often than not, you will enjoy it afterwards. You just have to get through the hard part of like wanting to initiate, because so often you're like, like I'll tell you that when we're like watching TV at night, like there were times where I would specifically go to bed before him because I'm like, oh, I don't want to have him look at me and go like, hey. So I'll have to either say yes or no. So sometimes I would just go to bed early to avoid the whole situation.
Well, okay, so now HBO. I want to take... Thank God for HBO. Okay, I want to take the question of resentment from a slightly different angle. You might have already answered this, so if I'm coming at this too much, just let me know. But I just wonder if before you had put in place that process, the initiation game...
Intimacy lifestyle.
The intimacy lifestyle, right? Before you had implemented that, I mean, you said that your body just didn't feel sexualized. I mean, you're not feeling confident in your own body, although that's probably misplaced because I'm sure Jamie was still very attracted to you.
Of course.
But nonetheless, it's your experience. You're not feeling sexy, and then your body's feeling like a food making machine rather than a sex making machine. And so, and then here's your husband, who really his body hasn't changed, and you're kind of annoyed at that.
Well, he's just gotten a little fatter.
He's just gotten a little fatter, but he's still got his sex parts are still working, Maybe they all got fatter. I don't know.
We really know. I try not to look back at pictures.
Okay, so I mean, but I could see you being pretty pissed off that, like, here's this guy who still wants to have sex, but he didn't have to go through with any of this stuff I did.
Oh, so it's a resentment from Jess's perspective versus mine.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from Jess's. I mean, yours is easier for me to relate to.
I'm sure.
I mean, I didn't, honestly, Eric, I didn't resent him for like his body, because I mean the thing about this whole process is we're all also getting older. So
Kind of, Jess. I mean, give me a break.
but kids really age you pretty fast, and so I mean, I don't know. It's not like I was looking at him going, "You're so sculpted and sexy." I mean,
Right.
it's not that I didn't think that, but it's like we were. I don't know. I don't know how to explain this. Like, I didn't resent him for his body. I just didn't want it. I was just like, your sexual parts just feel a little dead inside. It's not there.
Maybe it's not about you resenting him for his body, but he is asking you for sex when you don't want it.
Right.
You just don't want it.
Yeah, it's annoying.
I mean,
when you
nobody
feel
wants to
like
do
your
something they
partner
don't want to
doesn't
do.
Understand it.
What's that?
I said it's annoying when you feel like your partner doesn't get how you're feeling about it.
Is that sort of the critical insight there?
Maybe. I don't know. I wonder. I'm kind of surprised that you would think that I didn't understand it, because I know I can't sympathize, but I could empathize with where you were.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not like you didn't share your feelings, and it's not like you were somebody who hides how you're feeling about anything. So it's not like I was in the dark about it, and I didn't get the sense that you resented me for not carrying children or anything like that, but I knew that you didn't necessarily want to have sex. It's not like I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really take it personally. It wasn't about me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it had nothing to do with me. So it's not, I didn't feel both surprised. I didn't feel angry about it. I felt disappointed at days, but that's once again, for totally selfish reasons. But I do empathize with what you went through. And my mantra to myself about it was just be patient.
Yeah.
Just this too shall pass, as everything else in our relationship has also.
And you were very patient. I mean, I have to say, even though at times it was really hard, he never pushed or got frustrated or anything like that. I mean, I can honestly say he was a very good spouse in that respect, is that even though it was difficult and there were, frustrating times for him, he was always very, very patient.
Remind me how old your oldest child is.
3.5.
Oh, okay. So he's not playing Would You Rather yet. He's too young for it.
Yet.
We did actually a preschool version of it the other day. It was like, would you rather like eat poop or dirt? Like we did one of those. So, but yeah, not really.
No, good. That's what I was hoping. So tell me, let's answer some of his questions. What was poop or dirt? Which one would you rather have?
That was one I just made up. I had like a list that I found online that I was going through. It was like, would you rather have a really fat arm or a really fat leg? I'm trying to remember what they were. I was reading them off of a list. They're pretty fun.
All right, fat arm or fat leg?
I don't remember his answers. Are you asking us?
I'm asking you now. Fat arm or fat leg, Jamie?
I'll go for fat legs.
I guess I'll go for arms.
Why, just to be different?
Yeah, I guess so.
And I said fat legs because I already have big legs, so I feel like it wouldn't be too much of a change to my lifestyle.
Okay.
Just go for the full-blown tree trunks.
That's exactly right. No pants that fit.
Okay, Batman or Superman, Jessica?
Batman.
Oh, Superman all the way.
Well, I love when couples are different on this one. Why do you guys each say what you say?
Well, Nathan has been in a total Batman obsessed phase, so I'm just like, it's Batman all the time.
And Superman, because of where he grew up, he has this righteous sense of American justice, but it's totally misplaced because of his childhood.
Okay, all right. Enlightenment or $1 billion?
I'll take $1 billion.
And I'm absolutely taking enlightenment. And I hope I'm going to use your $1 billion to buy my enlightenment.
I feel like I'm pretty enlightened already.
Of course.
Of course you do, Jessica. That's so great. Okay, all right. And then if you had to die in the next 5 minutes or live for infinity, which would it be?
I'm dying in the next 5 minutes.
I'm living for infinity.
Is it because you're kids, Jess?
No. I think it's just because why would I want to die?
I can't imagine why you would want to live forever. Wow, we are so not on the same page with these
It's an
particular
amazing
questions.
time to be alive. There's so many things that are being created and invented, and I just think life is wonderful. Why would I want to die?
But life is wholly defined by the fact that it ends at some point, and life would not be life if it never ended.
We have some different views on death.
We do. We definitely do.
But that's the most succinct response I think I've had from that perspective, Jamie. Life would not be life if it were not for death.
Yeah, I truly there's very little I trust in the world except for the fact that we're all going to die and that our experience would be totally different if we didn't know that was the end result for everything.
Yeah. And infinity, Jessica, I just got to push you a little bit on it. I mean, infinity. It's not, we are in interesting times, but these times are going to pass. You know, the sun is going to go supernova at some point.
This world will be gone.
And then, I'll either die or I won't. If I won't, then I'm invincible. That's what you're saying.
Or maybe you're already,
Yeah.
maybe it's just being in heaven and that you're still just pulling from that solid Christian raising or childhood of yours.
Or maybe if you're enlightened.
That's right. She knows things that we don't.
I'm enlightened and I have $1 billion. Why would I want to die?
It's so true.
Thanks, Donald Trump. Right there.
And compounding interest over eternity from
Yeah,
$1 billion.
exactly.
That's some
I
resources
could get myself
there.
to Mars and build a new house there.
That made me just think of the restaurant at the end of the universe in Douglas Adams. I don't know if either of you are familiar with that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. That's, once again, put a penny in now. By the time you reach the end of the universe, you'll have your whole meal paid for.
Your whole meal. So good. So good. All right, you guys. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. It was a real pleasure, and I appreciate your opening up so much.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thanks for pushing us.
Well, that's it for our episode with Jamie and Jessica, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Jamie and Jessica, you can check out their podcast. It's called The Parenting Rhodes. That's RHODES. And you can find it on iTunes, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And be sure to check out our sponsors for today's episode, Knock Knock, makers of the Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. You can find their website at knockknockstuff.com, and I'll put a link to their website in our show notes. Send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock. That's a cute phrase, isn't it? If you liked what you heard on the show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a big difference. Please also consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, and every penny really helps because I got to tell you, our expenses far outstrip our income. You can find our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/together. That's patreon.com/together. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out via one of our platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide, which is where we post all of our magazine articles. You can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/Together Show, and we would love it if you would like our Facebook page. Twitter and Instagram are both at @together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. And I love hearing from listeners, so don't be shy. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.